Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneurs Show, where we celebrate the innovators driving change in the education industry. At Edison OS, we've worked with over 500 knowledge entrepreneurs to turn their edtech ideas into profitable businesses. Hello, Dr. Amy. Welcome to the Knowledge Entrepreneur Show. Thanks so much for taking time out for this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for asking me.
My pleasure. Dr. Amy, I had a chance to go through your bio page on the sjny.edu, and it's interesting how you began with criminal justice and sociology, and then you worked while you did that. After you completed that, you worked with juvenile offenders in a residential treatment facility, and then you moved on to teaching, and then you're also known for using a lot of technology
Mhm.
and infographics. It was fascinating to read the number of stuffs that you're doing, but I want to take it one by one. My first question to you is what was your interest behind choosing criminal justice and sociology? Is there anything specific, or is that the only thing that you got?
No, so I actually went to college on a pre-law scholarship, and
Hmm.
my original intention had been to go to law school. And honestly, I tell my students this all the time. My first semester there, I had an internship with the law firm that gave me my scholarship, and I absolutely loved working with them, but they were all miserable at their jobs. And so I rethought my idea of going to law school and was kind of looking for what I wanted to do. Took a couple of criminal justice classes, and my second year at in college, I ended up doing an internship working with juvenile offenders. So I was working with the diversion program with county attorney's office, and I absolutely fell in love working with kids. And a lot of them were in trouble for minor things, drinking underage, vandalism, not going to school. And so it was very rewarding, being able to see like even small changes they were making. And I would see them out in the community and they would come up and talk to me and tell me about like how much they'd changed since then. And so I switched my major to criminal justice. And um, then after I was done, I started working with juvenile offenders that were in a residential program. So for much more serious crimes, but still just as rewarding as what I'd seen while I was in college.
Got it, Dr. Amy. One of the questions that I don't know if it's going to occur to a lot of people, for me, the moment you say, offenders, and this time for more serious stuff than, before, how easy or difficult is it to teach them or work from a correctional point of view? What are the challenges and how did you overcome them?
Challenges to working with offenders.
Yeah,
Um, so not only are they offenders, but they're juveniles, so they're young. They're in the middle
right.
of puberty, which brings its own challenges. And a
Yeah,
lot of them were victims. So I worked not exclusively, but primarily with sex offenders. And so a lot of them had been victimized themselves. So not only did they have to work through in therapy their own offending, but they also have to work through their victimization. And so
right.
some of the challenge, like I would say their family relationships a lot of times were some of the most challenging parts because you essentially remove a juvenile from their environment and give them treatment, so you teach them new ways of behavior, and it becomes very easy for them to adapt to that because they're not making a lot of decisions. There's uh, they're told when to get up in the morning, when to eat all of their meals, when to go to school, when to have recreation. They're told what their laundry day is because they take care of all of that stuff. They help make the meals and everything. And so it's very easy to behave, and they're encouraged to behave. We had a point system and stuff like that. But what they're not taught, and not just in the program I was in, but just in general, we found over time they're not taught how to maintain that behavior once they're back in their old environment and back around, the people that maybe victimize them or the people they victimize. or people that just encourage negative behavior. And so that was really frustrating for me sometimes because then we get them back. And so, we'd have to start all over.
Got it, Dr. Amy. Is it safe for people who work with juvenile offenders and offenders? Have you worried for your safety, or have you had anxious moments?
Yes. I mean, it's always a possibility. There were times when I was in the facility. Thankfully, I never had anything like overly bad happen to me there. But
Right.
also, I worked with kids in a halfway house, and so they were on their way out of the entire system, and that's what we were
Hmm.
teaching. So towards the end of my time in residential, we were teaching juveniles youth how to live on their own. And so there were a couple of times one of the youth in the program did not successfully complete and was back out in the community, and so that was you know like re reason for concern. And then since then, I've had one that has found me as I've moved around the country, and so again, that's a little bit of a reason for concern as well sometimes.
Got it, Dr. Amy. And you worked with offenders only till you completed your PhD, right? After that,
No,
you.
no, only until I completed my master's degree.
Right.
So I worked with offenders for about 10 years through my undergraduate degree and then after.
Wow. Okay. That's a significant amount of time.
It
And
is, yeah.
yeah, I was thinking, okay, maybe a couple of years or something like that. So,
No.
right. So you finish your master's and then you go on to do your PhD. And after master's, while you do PhD, I'm sure you were continuing to teach. Um, do you did your experience, the decades worth of experience with offenders, have any impact when it came to teaching normal students? Was it any challenging at all, or what was your take, or what was your experience when it came to that?
I mean, it's honestly, it's entirely different because I was working with youth and who didn't have a lot of um, ability, to not do what they were supposed to, like they're in a very structured environment. And so now I'm in a very unstructured classroom. And so one of the biggest challenges I think for me was just being aware that they are adults making their own decisions and having to reap the consequences of those decisions. So, if they choose not
Right,
to do an assignment, just to let them fail. And so, not fail the whole class, but fail that assignment, or
right,
not even
right.
fail, but just making sure they were responsible. I'm really good at holding juveniles responsible. Like I was really good in that environment. And so it was really hard to translate that into a classroom experience.
Right. So the juvenile offenders didn't have a choice.
Now, I mean, not really. Like I said, you're told when to do everything. Yeah, I mean, they had a choice, but
Right.
so maybe that's not the right way to say that. More that like it's easy to just go with the flow, if that makes
Right,
sense.
right, right,
Like
right, 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 right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
When you don't have a choice, I mean, what else
yeah,
you're gonna do? You're gonna do it anyway. But
right.
it's when you have the freedom and when you have the choice is when you're a little more like free and may not do stuff. Got it. And
Yeah.
how long did it take for you to adjust and come to terms with, okay, here I'm dealing with a bunch of free people and, this is all I can do?
So a lot of that happened while I was in my PhD program. My first year in my PhD program, I was a TA for a faculty member that I absolutely adored. He was so good in the classroom and so good at those kinds of things. And so, like, where I would probably have been more like, oh, can't we, like, give them some leeway? He's like, no, like, these are the rules. You have to stick to them. And so that definitely helped. And then third year, I think. I actually taught with one of my colleagues in the PhD program. So two students team taught excuse me, a class together. And so that was really nice because I had somebody to bounce ideas off of and to bounce questions like that and stuff off of. So uh I was pretty, I'm trying to think. I was pretty well prepared by then. My first teaching job, I had not finished my PhD yet. So I started
Right.
teaching after I finished my coursework and then finished my dissertation while I was teaching full time. So definitely by the time I hit that job, I had adjusted to being in the classroom instead of being in a residential facility.
Got it, Dr. Amy. And Dr. Amy, you said you started teaching while you were still doing your bachelor's, right? You started teaching students in a correctional facility, and then while you did your master's, you were still teaching juvenile offenders who probably committed more serious crimes. And while you were a student yourself, so did that have any kind of bearing on you or an impact on the way you went about studying your course? Did it have any impact at all?
Yeah, I wasn't teaching them. I was a resident counselor, so I was more in charge of the stuff outside of the classroom, but it did. So the reason I went and got my PhD is because I had an excellent education in my undergraduate program, but
Right.
both of my professors had gone through their bachelor's all the way to their PhD and had never worked in the criminal justice system. And so they taught us a lot about how the system was supposed to work, but I was
Mm,
seeing the way it actually worked. So I was sitting in court and seeing how things, like actually worked in the court system. And then we'd go into class and they'd tell us, like the textbook version of the criminal justice system.
right.
And I would say, that's not what happened yesterday
Is it a
when I
lot
was in
different?
court. It is, yes.
Okay.
I mean, not completely different, but one example, the classic image of the criminal justice system in the United States is adversarial. So you have a prosecutor and a criminal justice, like you have a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and they come into court, and there's this adversarial system where you're, interviewing witnesses, and questioning witnesses and going back and forth and that kind of thing. The reality, at least at the juvenile level, is there's a conference before everybody goes into the courtroom, and the
Mm,
defense attorney and the prosecutor and like the providers, which is what I was at that point in time, and the juvenile offender, everybody's sitting in one room together without the judge and says, okay, this is what we're thinking. Are we all on the same page? And a lot of that's because the idea behind the juvenile justice system is what's in the best interest of the child and kind of wrapping
right.
services around that child.
Right.
But a lot of that happens at the adult level too, where there's a lot of conferencing that happens behind the scenes. And so that's where you see like the plea bargains and stuff like that. But it's not the same. The same, like we have these ideas about what residential treatment should look like or what correction should look like. And I don't disagree, like those would be great, like some of them. But the reality is, and it's easier for me to think about this now. I was 21 when I graduated from college, and
Okay.
I went to work in a state where juvenile offenders could be up to the age of 19. So I
Wow.
literally
Okay.
was there with, yeah, some of those juveniles were 2, 3, 4 years younger than me. I wasn't working with, really young people.
Yeah.
And so, I remember one time I was in a hearing about, I can't remember if she was pregnant or if she'd already had the baby, but a young mother, and about whether she should keep the baby. And they wanted my professional, like, thoughts on whether this other person should keep their child or not. And I said, I'm barely old enough to have my own child. I don't know, I don't have the expertise necessary to determine whether this person's going to be a good mother, like that's way above anything, that I have the expertise for, because it was the first we were starting to work with
Right.
pregnant teens. And so I was like, I can't answer that. Like that's way above anything I know anything about. So uh yeah, so the expectations are very different from the
Right.
reality.
Right. Right.
I
And
also think that
Yeah, good.
Okay, I also think that in the classroom, we kind of cleanse what the criminal justice system is like, and in the sense that we don't talk about like things that can happen. Um, I'm trying like not every day is a good day. There are days when the people that you're working with are not um, they don't want to be there. I mean,
Right,
I tell my students all the time, you are meeting people on the worst day of their life sometimes. If you're talking
right,
about
right,
arresting somebody, you're talking about intaking somebody into a jail or a residential facility. So when I'm in my classroom now, we watch videos of, crimes that occur. Like there's one video I watch pretty frequently about all of the gang murders in Chicago, and there's some pretty graphic language in there, and there's some pretty graphic violence in there. And I don't like, showing language and violence just for no reason. But I also tell my students, like, if this bothers you in my classroom, we should probably have a talk about how you're going to handle that if you are a law enforcement officer, and somebody's swearing at you and, acting violent towards you and stuff like that. And so I feel like we don't bring enough of that realness into the classroom sometimes, and you can't bring all of it, like I'm not going to drop my students in the middle of a violent, gang shooting or anything like that. But you
right.
can definitely prepare them better than I felt like I was prepared.
Got it, Dr. Amy. And now, moving to the you using technology and, infographics and stories and all of those things, what prompted you or what made you utilize technology while you were teaching?
Okay, so I have been using a computer since I was in junior high, which is very different for my generation. But my dad
Yeah,
had computers in work, and he would let me use it to type up all of my papers and stuff like that. So I'd been using a computer back when I was using DOS commands, so it was like the black or blue screen, with the DOS commands and stuff like that. And
yeah,
so I've always been around technology. My dad and my brothers all work in telecommunications. So my dad originally built telecommunications systems, and then he sold them. And then my brother and both my brothers and him all work for the same telecommunications engineering firm. And so I've been around technology, for what feels like all of my life. And so I've always just been really comfortable with it. That first teaching job I had in Iowa, one of the first things I did was get qualified to teach online classes and to start developing online classes because I could see the benefit for our students. It's a small rural college, all over the state, and so I I could see the benefit, for our school and for the students for that. And I've never been fearful of technology. And so, but what I've learned over the years is, and again, this started in my PhD program. So I would prepare all of my presentations on the computer, have a computer cart brought in, because at that point in time, computers weren't in all of the classrooms like they are now. And so I'd have a computer cart there. It didn't always work. And
right.
so I learned not to be dependent on the technology and how to, kind of punt if I have to in the classroom or in other ways. But I've also learned over the years not to just use technology because it's a bright, shiny object that's fun, but to really think about the pedagogy. And so for me, like the infographics ties back into the criminal justice aspect. The very first time I used infographics, I want to say, I can't remember exactly how long ago it was, but it's probably been close to 10 years the first time I used them. And so I used them for a couple of semesters and then, really refined that assignment. And I had a group of students come through, and one of my students, the next semester after she took the class where I was using infographics, did her internship, and she interned with a domestic violence advocacy agency and
Hmm.
was able to put together infographics for them on some of the statistics about domestic violence on Long Island. And because of her work there, she was invited to go to the state legislature with her agency and present to the legislators from around New York about the problems with domestic violence on Long Island. And she came back for that trip with multiple offers for jobs once she graduated. And so,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, between that and then like 2020 hit, and even before that, a lot of law enforcement agencies were struggling with positive public image,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and they didn't have a lot of people that could create content for social media. And so I recognized very early that providing my students with those skills would potentially give them advantage over other people that were going for the same positions.
Amazing. Got it, Dr. Amy. And you then went on to, serve as the associate dean, director of online learning. Um, you spoke about out of your own interest what you did, but as an associate dean and a director responsible for online learning, what are your responsibilities? What are you responsible for? And what are the things that you think are misconceptions about director of online learning?
Okay. Um, so my responsibilities personally is pretty varied. I work with admissions and our marketing team to on our digital advertising for our online programs. So again, keeping the website up, um, and working with our digital marketer on different audiences for our programs, also on different programs that we should be offering online. And so I work with curriculum committee and the faculty on developing new programs. The one we just launched, so we launched several in 2015. We've actually had online programs since 2000, I can't, 2005, I think.
Wow.
We've had
Okay.
online, yeah, we've had online classes since the 90s. And then I think our first online program was in 2005, but we launched a full online campus in 2015 with multiple online programs at the undergrad and graduate level. But our most recent one was psychology. And again, that was getting feedback from our digital marketer that there's demand for that, and then working with the psychology department to develop the curriculum for the online program and how we're going to do that. And then I work with the faculty on developing the actual online classes. So we have an instructional design team and a technology education team, but then I oversee like that whole development process, from department wanting to offer an online course to selecting faculty to do that, and then the instructional design process and approval of that course. And so I work as liaison between my team, between instructional design and technology education, and then the faculty to make sure that we have really good, well-designed courses. Um, and then I do a lot of faculty development. And so AI's been a big thing. So sometimes it's things that I see that are happening out in academia in general that I'll bring to the campus. And other times it's faculty members reaching out to me. So AI has been a big one. We also do short classes during the semester. So we'll have some classes that run the first half of the semester and some that run the second half of the semester. And so right now, one of the things we're looking at is how students do in those two classes, whether there are differences in their performance if they're taking a class the early part of the semester or the late part of the semester. And so sometimes I take suggestions from the faculty on the things they need.
Wow. Interestingly put. You take suggestions from the faculty about the things they need. Um, Got it. And a lot of people that I've spoken to who've been directors for online learnings, they do a lot with helping teachers with putting together online courses and stuff like that, helping them using the tools and stuff. But that aside, Dr. Amy, are you also responsible for the number of enrollments or the revenue uh, as well?
Um, Not directly.
Okay,
Uh, I like our admissions department is probably more directly responsible for the number of enrollments.
right.
I am like always aware, and then my team. So I have two people that work for me that re-enroll students after they're already here, and so definitely responsible for that. You know, making sure that our students are being successful, that they're coming back, and that kind of thing. So yes, but maybe not directly.
Not directly. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. I also the other like one of the big tasks that's come up recently is digital accessibility. So making sure all of
Hmm.
our courses are digitally accessible. So our videos have
Right.
transcriptions, that anything that's in the courses is available in multiple ways. And again, I don't do that personally, but I just like oversee that process and make sure that it's going well for everybody. So
Got it, Dr. Amy. You said, you started online classes way back in the 90s, and then you had a program in the 2005, and then an online campus in 2015. So it's not like online is anything new, but how has it changed since the pandemic? Has there been any change at all, or pandemic has it not played any role in how your online programs have been going?
Um, I would say the biggest change for us is we've added virtual programs. So those would be like an asynchronous, no, sorry, a synchronous program instead of asynchronous. So we have a lot of faculty that are teaching.
So virtual is in addition to the online program that you have. The online program and the online school that you spoke about were asynchronous. The
Yes,
difference after the pandemic is the virtual program is synchronous.
yes.
Okay,
And so a lot of our graduate programs have moved to completely virtual. So a lot of our education programs, for example, our graduate education programs, and you have teachers, they've been in the classroom all day. And honestly, both of our schools are commuter schools, and they're in very traffic congested place. Like our one of our campuses is in Brooklyn, New York,
right,
and the other one's on Long Island, and it can take anywhere from 5 minutes to get someplace to 30 minutes. Like very short, places, and it can take a lot longer than that. So
right.
to be able to take classes, from your own home, but still be able to see everybody has worked really well for our graduate programs. And so I would say that's definitely one change. I think a lot of people that were afraid of technology, that were afraid of online, are embracing it more now.
Hmm.
And like we have one professor that was absolutely adamant before the pandemic that not teaching online, never, none of my, there's not going to be a single class in my department online. And with the pandemic, he started teaching online, and then he developed some courses online, and he absolutely loves it because he's able to give those students individualized attention. He said, I've
Right,
taken all of that lecturing that I would normally do in the classroom and put that up so that they can watch that in their own time. And now my time is able to be devoted to going in and working with students individually on what they don't understand, on what they need. And he said, and that's what I've always loved about teaching. And so, I mean, that's just one story, but I have, a lot of those. So, and those would be
got
the
it.
two changes. I would say more recently, I have a lot of faculty that are rethinking teaching online because of AI and because of cheating. They say it's become so difficult to even create assignments, and then
Right, right.
grading assignments knowing that so many of their assignments are most likely uh, written by AI and stuff like that.
Written by
So
AI. Yeah.
yeah.
As I was going to bring AI up to
Hmm.
ask, what is your stance, SJNY's stance on Gen AI, and how much student can use, or have you prohibited them? So Yeah.
So some of our faculty do prohibit it completely, and some of the
Hmm.
faculty allow the use of it, but then direct that use, like what's okay. In my own classroom, I allow them to use AI, but I want them to tell me if they have and how they've used it. And we talk a lot about like how best to use AI. Again, this all comes back to the world of criminal justice, right? AI is out there. And there are
Right.
some really good ways that AI can be used to make somebody's job a little bit easier, even in criminal
Right.
justice. But also, there's a lot of people that are using AI to commit crimes. And so I want my students to know what AI is. I want them to
Yeah.
understand it. And AI is being used to create false images. I mean, we see them all the time, like false
Yeah.
images, false videos. And so, this idea that we've always had of if you can have photographic or video evidence and bring that into the courtroom, that's like, the gold standard. Well, it's not anymore. And so, I showed them some of the things that I tried with AI. Like, I tried to create an image with AI, and I bring this to my classroom all the time. And I was trying to do something for my nieces and nephews, and so I asked for a picture of a farm and I wanted kids on the farm. And then I wanted like there weren't enough animals or something like that. And all of a sudden
Right.
I had chickens with two heads and I had, animals with the body of one animal and the head of another. And I didn't ask for that. But it
Right.
just,
Right.
like all of a sudden it was creating these really crazy pictures. And so, we talk about how AI isn't always, like perfect, and you have to, really think about what you're doing. And so the other thing I do is I try to create assignments where it's not easy to use AI inappropriately. So again, with the infographics, you can't, that's not something that AI
Yeah,
is
you can
capable
create with
of
AI.
doing.
Yeah. Not
Right.
yet,
And
at
now,
least.
yeah, not yet. And you can cheat in other ways, right? You can copy and paste from other places, but my
Right.
my infographic assignments are so specific that it's not likely somebody's going to have, this like what I'm looking for already out there. I'm not looking like they have very specific requirements for what's in their infographics.
Mm.
And the same thing, like even my discussion boards are so specific that it's very difficult. And honestly, they're short. They're not like really long discussion boards where you have to have citations and stuff. I use my discussion boards more like the discussion in the classroom. And I really think it would actually take more work for them to try to get an AI answer than it would to just, type up the answer themselves. And then I do annotation assignments instead of discussion board sometimes. So I'll give them a written piece of work and ask them questions in there and or have them ask questions about what they're reading. And again, like it would literally take more work for them to go to AI than it would to just do that. And then my videos, my lectures, I actually embed questions within the lectures themselves. And so again, like I try to find creative ways that make it more of an effort to use AI or more of an effort to cheat than
Right.
it is to just do the assignment in the first place.
Got it, Dr. Amy. And at SJNY, is it a hybrid model where, do the students have choice whether they have to come to the classroom or they can take virtual programs, or is it a mix of both?
So our course modalities are either on campus, online, virtual, or hybrid, where you're on campus half the time,
Okay.
off, and then online half the time. But if you're taking a class on campus, that class is just on campus. So
Right.
it's not like the high flex. But our on-campus students can take a mix of online and on-campus classes. Our fully online students can only take online classes.
Got it. And what's the percentage split, if you have to say, between fully online and on-campus students?
Um,
Roughly.
and yeah. So the fully online is a very small percentage. Like
Right. Yeah. That's what I was going to comment. You don't have to
yeah,
put a number
like
at all.
15 to
Yeah.
yeah, 15% at the most. I want to say we have, on average, we tend to have about 500 online students, and we have about 4,000 students altogether. So,
Got it. And how's this, changing every year? Is it even changing? Do you think there's going to be a point when it's going to be 50-50? A lot of people are going to go online? No? Okay.
no, um, we track pretty well every semester, like how many of our students are taking online classes.
Right.
And about 75% of our students in our online classes are from one of the two campuses. Only about 25% of that course enrollment is from our fully online students. So what I do see is, and again, we've tracked this over multiple semesters before and after the pandemic. One of the things you see after the pandemic is more students wanting to take classes online. And so we typically tell them they can only take two in any given semester online. We do have some that ask for more. And again, if it's appropriate, we will allow that.
Right.
We don't see an increase in the number of students taking more than two classes online, but we do see an increase in just the number of students taking any classes online. And so that's been going up over the past couple of years. I'm trying to think, with our online students, they're a little bit younger than they have been in the past, which it matches the national average. Um,
Okay.
the national average has been going down for quite a while, but yeah.
Got it, Dr. Amy. And for the virtual programs and online programs for the fully online students, what does your tech stack look like?
What does what look like?
The online technology in terms of, the platforms that you use, it could be for live
Okay.
classes or it could be for, hosting
Yep.
courses.
Okay. So we use Canvas as our learning management system for both, like for all of our courses, and then we have Kaltura. It's what we use for videos.
Sorry,
And
can you repeat that? What's that? Calcutta.
Kaltura. Yep,
Okay.
that's what we use to record videos. And it's
Okay.
nice because it gives a lot of options for the faculty member as far as different screens that you can use, because you can have your
Interesting.
presentation up, you can have your image up if you want, but you don't have to. So it's got a lot of flexibility, but it also auto captions,
Hmm.
which is nice for the faculty members, and produces a transcript. You can also embed questions within Kaltura.
Is this a
And so
substitute for Zoom? You don't use Zoom at all?
we use Zoom for our virtual classes.
Oh, so you can't use Calcutta for virtual classes, is it?
No, no, Kaltura is just for recording classes,
Right. For the
for
faculty
recording
record.
lectures. Yep, yep.
Got it. Got it.
And then we also use VoiceThread for presenting lectures sometimes. And then we just got access through Canvas to Lucid, which is a whiteboard technology. And that we would be able to use with both Zoom and Zoom, our in-person classes, and our online classes. So for
Got it. Got
collaboration,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Got it. And as the associate dean, are you the one who's responsible for choosing the tools, or who are the ones that are involved in making a decision? Okay, these are the tools that's going to best serve the online programs or the virtual programs, Dr. Amy.
Yep, we have a faculty technology committee, and I'm on there. There's faculty members from both campuses and online faculty on there, and the provosts and the deans are on that committee as well. And
Right.
so, and then our head of IT is on there, and so recommendations are made there. And then what typically happens is IT creates like demos for us, and
Okay.
sets up demos of different software. That's what so since I've been the associate dean, we switched from Blackboard to Canvas. We switched from Panopto to Kaltura for the video recording. We added Zoom. We had a different video conferencing.
Any specific
Um,
reason for that, Dr. Amy, switching from Blackboard to Canvas?
the flexibility of Canvas and
Right.
just the better features. It's easier to use. than Canvas. It's a little bit, the user interface is better.
Got
And
it.
so I'm not definitely not the only one making the decision.
Of
I
course.
weigh in like the other faculty and stuff, but
Are the students ever
ultimately,
involved at all,
yep.
given that they are the main? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we actually have students on the faculty technology committee, and so they frequently bring to issues to us, and then yeah, students are involved in the whole process too. So
Wonderful.
um, yeah, and then ultimately the deans and the provosts make the decision, and again the head of IT, all of our vice presidents are the ones that ultimately make the decision.
Got it, Dr. Amy. And when it comes to, misusing AI to complete your assignments or complete your programs and stuff like that, have you thought about what possibly could be the solutions to that particular situation? Or uh, do you have a different perspective?
Um, well, we use Turnitin, and Turnitin does have an AI detection software built into it now,
Oh,
and so
wow.
we
Okay.
do,
Sorry,
yeah,
what's that? It's a tool?
turn, yep, Turnitin.
Turn
It's
it in.
actually,
Okay.
yep, yeah, plagiarism detection tool, but it does have AI um, capabilities to check to see if something is potentially AI generated.
Okay.
Honestly, we don't depend on those because, there's a lot of false positives, a lot of false negatives. And
Right.
so, we have talked to the faculty about other ways. So, for example, if you require citations and references, a lot of times in an essay that's used AI, they just make up citations. They just make up references that aren't real. And so, we talked to faculty about checking that. Um, and different things like that. Also, a lot of times it won't actually answer the question or, like whatever, and so we try to work with that more than anything. As far as AI, so grade based on whether it actually meets the requirements of the assignment or not, rather than just focusing on, what percentage is AI. We have come up with some like interesting situations, especially here lately. So there's software that students can use to
Mm-hmm.
check to see if their writing is going to be flagged as AI. So their own writing, whether it would be flagged as potentially being AI or not.
Oh,
And
okay.
we have some students that are not native English speakers that have used that because they've been flagged in the past. So they'll put it through an AI checker, and so then it's picked up not as being AI written, but being, having gone through the AI checker. And so, the question is, does a faculty member think that's okay or not? Or is that, an inappropriate use of AI? And so we're constantly, having workshops, having um, just chats about AI, like what are you seeing in your classroom? What are you seeing in yours? What are you using for a policy? How are you changing your assignments? And just keeping that conversation going. In the spring, we're actually doing a panel of both
Mm-hmm.
faculty and students. And so it's going to be a panel for the faculty, although students could sit in, but we're specifically looking at how faculty versus students interpret different policies because we all set our own policy. Like we have some
Right.
general guidelines, but what does it mean if it says no AI use? Does that mean you can't use Grammarly? You can't use, like when if I'm typing something in Google Docs, for example, a lot of times it'll finish my sentence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that okay or is that not okay? And some of those kinds of things. So I think that'll be really interesting to see what comes out of that panel in the spring.
Got it, Dr. Amy. I'll probably conclude the podcast with this question as a director for online learning and together as part of the faculty technology committee. What are the top couple of problems that come to your mind or pain points that you're solving when it comes to online programs or virtual programs that you're offering?
I mean, the academic dishonesty is a big one. Um, we
Okay.
had used, whether it's cheating on a test, plagiarism, AI, you're not in the classroom, so
Right.
you don't see, and you can't monitor. We used to have software that would we used to have Proctor U to proctor exams and stuff like that, and we've talked about different ways to do that. But again, with both AI detection software and with a lot of the proctoring software, there's so many privacy concerns, um, you
Right.
know, uh, especially for an online class, because you don't know who else is in the room, if
Right.
somebody's taking, a class from home or anything like that. And so we've chosen not to use any of those. And so it is a struggle as a faculty member to, kind of design assignments in a way that discourages all forms of academic dishonesty. Um, I think, um, other than that, again, like we spend a lot of time making sure that our courses are really well developed and our students really enjoy them. One of the things, and one of the reasons you asked me earlier if I thought that we would ever be like 50-50 as
Right.
far
Right.
as 50% online, one of the reasons we won't is because it's a small school. Our average course size, like our teacher to student ratio is like 1 to 14, I think right now. 1 to 12, 1 to
Wow.
14, something like, yeah. So it's a small school and our students appreciate that one-on-one time with their faculty, and they like taking online classes because they like the flexibility. They are commuter students, they're working, they're taking care of family members. They do have a lot of responsibilities. And so they appreciate the flexibility of online classes, but they also love being in the classroom. And
Right.
so, I think that's the biggest struggle is how to make those classes more personal and how to keep that up and, how to build community. And I think, again, people struggle with that across the country. So
Got it, Dr. Amy. Dr. Amy, thank you so much for your time. It
you're
was a
very welcome.
pleasure talking to you.
You too. Thank you.